Right, we've been learning about Norway. Now we're moving on to Denmark. So we haven't got all day. Let's have a super quick history of Denmark. And if you do enjoy, go down there, hit that like button, and subscribe for plenty more to come.
Hello, everyone,
Hello.
and welcome to Mr.
They didn't have horns.
This is Europe, and here is Denmark. Now let's zip our way through its history, shall we? Long ago, back when woolly mammoths wandered through the receding Ice Age wilderness of the north, the first inhabitants stepped into what would one day be Denmark. Denmark consists of the Jutland Peninsula, called Jylland in Danish, and over 1,000 islands, including this big one called Sjælland, or Zealand in English.
The quick one. When I think of Denmark, I do not think of loads and loads of islands. I think of one, for some reason, I think of one solid landmass. When you think of lots of islands, I think of, I don't know, Southeast Asia, Indonesia and that sort of area, Philippines. I don't necessarily think of Denmark. And so that straight away, it seems a real simple thing. But straight away, that's one thing that I did not know or realise. So interesting.
English, not to be confused with Zeeland in the Netherlands, which New Zealand is named after, even though it's spelled like the Danish, not Dutch name, and yes, I suppose it is to be confused. Anyway, the first folks fixing themselves in Danish climes were hunters, who eventually began to farm the soil and set up the rudiments of a civilization. For 1,000 years, northern Denmark was part of the pitted ware culture, living in huts along the coast and hunting seal and boar. By the time the Bronze Age barges in, we see the people of Denmark have increased in technical cleverness, casting helmets like this and swords like that. It was during the Iron Age that the Germanic tribe known as the Danes began migrating into what would become their homeland, supplanting the also Germanic Jutes, who preferred immigrating to Britain. The Celts to the south taught the Danes how to smelt and smith iron, which the Danes extracted from bogs and swamps. Speaking of which, this is the face of an Iron Age Dane, who was buried in peatland bog over 2,000 years ago, which naturally mummified him. He was likely sacrificed by hanging, and a braided noose of animal skin was still tight round his neck when he was found in 1950. The Danes, like other Scandinavians, began using the writing system known as runes around 200 AD, those angular characters etched into objects and stones for telling tales and casting spells. This Danish comb has some of the oldest ever runic inscriptions engraved on it. The 8th century sees us in the Viking Age. Viking society consisted of 3 classes: the thralls, slaves consigned to house chores and farm work, who could be sacrificed when their owner died; the carls, free peasants, builders, farmers; and finally the jarls, the aristocracy who administered the state, owned more land and bigger, or I should say, longer houses. Viking women had a lot more society.
So the first thing, when you think of Scandinavian countries, so Norway, Denmark, for example, that's what you think of. That is all. I would like to think for 99% of people, when you mention those countries, that's potentially the first things you think of. It's the Vikings, it's the pillaging, it's the long houses, it's the helmets that don't have horns on. Now, obviously, that is an image that has stuck. Now, clearly, that is not what carried on. Christianity came up north and completely changed it. It's like when you think of England, what's the first thing you think of? You might think of royalty. You might think of drinking cups of tea. You don't necessarily think about the medieval era, do you? Or the Elizabethan era. You don't think about that. But for some reason, Norway, Denmark is sort of in people's minds stuck with this image of the Vikings, and it's crazy to think because Denmark has moved on since then.
Viking women had a lot more societal rights and freedoms than most contemporary cultures granted, but what Vikings are especially famous for is their pillaging raids and military conquests beginning in the late 700s. Why they started doing this is not certain, but what is certain is that Viking naval capabilities were second to none. They were...
Okay, sorry, but I am not good on the sea. I am not good on water at all. That will make my stomach go. And when you think of the longboats, yes, they are the masters of the sea. But it's not like a big ship, like, I don't know, the Amy Rose and those types of wooden ships. It is long and it's quite low. It's not very high, so waves will, coming up and down. I want to know how many of these Vikings that were traveling on the sea, coming over to Britain, going over to Normandy, were seasick. Was it a common problem? Hopefully you can tell me in the comments, and obviously like and subscribe while you're there. but was it a real issue with actual Vikings not feeling great on the ocean? Let me know, because I like, they're pretty sturdy and stuff, but it's still going to go up and down like that in the bad weather. Oh.
Were expert sailors and shipbuilders, which was bad news for much of Europe, as the Vikings were also ferocious warriors, whose pagan beliefs lauded death in battle. Danes began attacking England in 835, steadily bringing in settlers to live there, and seized Normandy and France, founding a colony under the leader Rollo. Denmark was strengthened, and it subjugated Norway under King Harald Bluetooth, who paved the way for his country's Christianization after he converted. Now, the English were getting pretty sick of Danish attacks, and in 1002, King Ethelred the Unready decided to kill all the Danes living in England. The massacre may have provoked Bluetooth's son, Sven Forkbeard, to invade some more, which he did several times until he conquered England in 1013. This conquest was reasserted by his son Knud, who proved a very apt and able king of his Anglo-Danish realm. Naturally, his domain did not long survive him, but increasingly Christian Denmark was changing, slowly learning that slavery was wrong, and that practice dwindled and died out.
Sorry, it's hardly like Catholicism and Christians had the high moral ground, do they? Christianity is known for crusades. They had plenty of slavery. They did things in the name of God. So there's no moral high ground from Christianity, for Christ's sake.
Middle Ages was a tough time. You had to be strong, like Veldimar, who had his warriors fighting over in Estonia as part of a crusade against the pagans there. According to legend, during the Battle of Lindeniza, the Estonians were winning when the Danish archbishop raised his hands and prayed, and a red flag with a white cross tumbled from the heavens and emboldened the Danes, who won the battle. The miraculous banner became Denmark's national flag, the Dannebrog, the world's oldest continuously used
impressive
flag.
Fact.
Now, if Denmark ever needed some spare cash, it would sell off some of its territories, which worked for a while, but went a bit far under Christopher II, so as to almost mortgage Denmark off the map. But fortunately, his son proved a stronger king, and taxed and conquered his debts away. Then the Black Death cast its ghostly glare over the land, and perhaps as many as 60% of Danes died of it. Margrethe proved to be an intelligent, judicious queen, promoting peace, and determined to have Scandinavia as a united entity, which she achieved with the Kalmar Union. This union lasted over a century, but Sweden restlessly attempted to wriggle out of it, succeeding at last in 1523. Meanwhile, Denmark sided with Luther over Rome, and became Protestant under Christian III. Christian IV was a very active and energetic monarch, full of courage and fond of drink. He oversaw his nation's further enrichment, and while he squandered a lot of wealth in warring against Sweden and others, the people loved him and he remained popular. His successor, Frederick III, declared war on Sweden again, and got thrashed, with the country almost totally conquered, though the capital Copenhagen, or Copenhagen in Danish, held out and bravely resisted, and the Dutch sent help, and Sweden went home. Frederick instituted absolute monarchy, giving the crown immense power. Anyway, life for the peasants continued to be dreary, while their dainty king enjoyed operas in Venice. His grandson was even more hedonistic. In 1788, the good chief minister Baunsdorf abolished serfdom. During the Napoleonic Wars, Britain feared Denmark might supply Napoleon with its fleet, and bombarded Copenhagen to ensure this didn't happen. British occupation of Danish waters proved ruinous to Denmark's economy, and in 1814, Denmark lost Norway to Sweden. King Frederick VII signed away the absolutism of royal power in 1849.
Wow, I did not know about that during the Napoleonic Wars. The fear that Denmark would help Napoleon. I did not know about. I'm saying that I don't know a lot about the Napoleon Wars, apart from we were prepared for Napoleon to sail across the Channel and he didn't. Because I've been down to Fort Nelson, for example, down in Portsmouth, and we were prepared. That's basically all I really know. And I think, like a lot of wars, Napoleon overstretched himself. But I didn't know that link between Britain and Denmark and us blockading them and things. That's quite interesting.
And Denmark thus entered modernity. Industrialization was readily embraced, and soon railways were lacerating the landscape. The country passed various reforms and remained neutral in World War I. The Great Depression made everyone miserable until the economy picked up steam in the late 1930s. In 1940, the Nazis invaded and took over, and the Danes were not very happy about it. After the war, Denmark became a founding member of NATO and joined the EEC, which would become the EU, all amid economic adversity. But the standard of living shot way up, alongside industrial production and, admittedly, taxes that subsidized its famous welfare system. Denmark today is a rich, happy country, ranked very high in the Human Development Index, listed as the least corrupt country in the world, and, while small, if you include its territory of Greenland, it is actually enormous. So that's Denmark, the land of Lego and the Little Mermaid, a land of great writers, great scientists.
Oh, now I've got to do the same thing. Do I know any of these guys. Okay, let's go back. Also, it's crazy that it owns Greenland, so we will do another video about that. Right, let's see
Denmark,
these.
the land of Lego and the Little Mermaid, a land of...
Right, Hans Christian Andersen, I know that. No, no, no. Okay.
Great writers, great science.
No, 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 no. Google Maps and Skype, yes.
Scientists, great film.
Carl Theodor Dreyer, no. Lars von Trier, no. Susan Briere, no.
Makers. And if you like food, one of the best restaurants in the world is in Denmark, where you can eat whatever this is. Millions of people visit every year. And thanks for visiting me in this video. Until next time. Bye.
Thank you, Mr. History. There's probably some little bits that were missed off. So with reading the comments of the original video, the War of 1864 was a very important loss for Denmark, like really important, or key to reshaping politics. And there's some other bits and bobs, but it's a super quick history, of course. Very, very interesting that. So it's good to see that they've also got a similar type of system that we have with the NHS, that healthcare that's taxes used to provide free healthcare, I assume. It's so important. Obviously, over here, it's very much mismanaged. But Denmark does seem like a nice place to live. That is one of the things. The Scandinavian countries, you see as fairly well off. Things are possibly slightly more pricier, but the standard of living is quite good, and that is a positive thing, isn't it? If you are living in Denmark, there's always going to be that pyramid where you've got people at the top and people at the bottom who struggle a little bit more. But Denmark is certainly a place I'd like to visit. Definitely the Legoland as well, just because it seems quite fun. But we will continue to explore. If you've got any videos that you recommend, especially if they're in English or they are translated into English, then please put them down in the comments, send them to me on Instagram. All the socials are here. And as always, I will catch you next time.